We get paid for that, residuals?
That's fine.
Okay. You are set to begin.
Okay, great. We'll call the City of Olivet Planning Community Design Commission for January 20th, 2022 to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Rob Jurgel,
Present.
Carol Wagner,
Present.
Jody Rich, present. Richard Brophy,
Absent.
Brian Lewis,
Present.
Daniel Rosenberg,
Absent.
and Tim Spiegelglass.
Present.
Okay, great. Let it also be known that Carlos Trejo, the Director of Olivet's Planning Community Development Department, is in attendance, as well as Don Doty, Senior Planner, and Bridget Waters, Administrative Assistant, as well as City Council Member Missy Waldman, who's our City Council Liaison. So thank you, everybody, for being here. And I think we'll start on, and we'll just kind of give a quick review of the commission procedures. We will be having a public comment, but I'll get to that later. But as far as the Zoom procedures, we're getting better with it, but just keep in mind and be patient with us as we go through this. There's always seems to be some little bug that we got to work out. So just be patient as we try to bring people on and off the panel for discussion. We do ask you when people are brought onto the panel that they state their name and address for the record. So we have that. And as far as when we will, as I mentioned before, we'll have public comments. These are for items that are not related to anything on the agenda. If you do have something that you want to present that's related to an agenda item, we'll have that discussion after we have the city report presented by staff, as well as discussion amongst the members of the commission. And then we'll also discuss with the petitioner themselves. And then at that point in time, then we'll bring in public comments related to that agenda item. We do ask, when the public is talking about an item, we do ask you to state your name and address for the record. And we also ask you that you limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes to be respectful for everyone's time and to make sure all the opinions are heard. So, Carlos, did I catch everything?
Seems like you got everything, sir.
Good, good. The only other thing I'll mention is if you do have a comment or that you want to talk about, there is a little icon at the bottom of your screens that should have a place to raise your hand. And we ask you that you do that. And there's also, if any of those are well-versed in Zoom, that there's a chat method. You can also add some questions or comments related, conducted via the chat as well. Okay. Carlos, do we have any public comments? And as a reminder, these are for items that are not on the agenda item.
Okay. At this point, I see none. Again, if you'd like to address the commission on a non-agenda item, if you can show your raise your hand, and that's generally located at the lower part of the Zoom screen, right in the middle, you'll see a raise hand. If you identify that, click that, it'll identify you as wanting to address the commission, and I can transfer you over. The same process will work as we go through the agenda. And as of right now, I don't see any hands in there. I'm assuming everybody on the attendee list is in regards to specific applications. I recognize several of the names, but if there is anybody that would like to speak, again, show your hand. I do ask the chair if we can just have a couple of seconds just to make sure there's any delay or anything slow.
I think that's good. I think it's appropriate, so we'll do that.
And at this point, Chairman, I do not see any hands raised. Okay,
good, good. That being said, we'll move on to item 4, which is consent business. And item A is 533 Long Acres Road. The petition type is a community design and concept stormwater management plan review for a new single-family home. Petitioner and owner, or petitioner is Harry Freeman with Freeman Homes. The property owner is Freeman Homes. Carlos?
Okay, Chairman, I'm going to ask our senior planner, Ms. Doty, if she can go over this agenda item.
Good.
55, sorry, 553 Long Acres Lane is part of the Birdie Lane subdivision. This is the front elevation that you see here on the screen. It appears to meet the requirements or facade requirements.
Carlos, we're back to oh, there we go. Never mind.
All of the stormwater or typical issues that we would review having to do with stormwater and traffic were already resolved and decided during the Birdie Lane subdivision planning. And this would be approximately where the house will be on will be in the subdivision. I had a little bit of an issue kind of overlaying the two, but that doesn't mean anything really. So it is towards the back of the subdivision as you get to the cul-de-sac on the left-hand side. Again, this was where I had an issue getting the aerials to kind of like work out. There is, as far as the materials go, we have with where it is positioned, the garages that are positioned off of the cul-de-sac, the garages technically face the road. So this would be an issue for the brick facade. If we wanted to wrap around the side and or to be completed on that side of the garage, we can go back to that garage. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's showing it where it is really in the intersection, but I've highlighted on the presentation where we have in the past anyway, noted where brick might appear. Did I cover that correctly, Carlos?
Absolutely.
Okay, I got a couple. Dawn, are you finished?
Yes, I am. Sorry, please. Any questions?
Let's see. Any members on the commission have any specific questions for Dawn?
And I know I might have skipped some things, so please fire away.
Carol, did you have a question? I saw your hand, so I wasn't sure. And if you're talking now, there you go.
Yeah, no, I'm just a little confused about, is the garage side facing the street? Is that, I wasn't clear about what Dawn was talking about there, and I just wanted a better understanding.
Looks like it's kind of the edge of the cul-de-sac, but Dawn, I'll let you talk about
Right. Sorry, my thing keeps muting itself. And where Carlos had it earlier, if you can see there on your screen where, and I don't know if you can see my mouse, but I guess you can't, where Longacre, the house, the entrance will be on the cul-de-sac. The entrance to the house will actually be on Longacre. So you can see that side of the house that, I guess that's west, no, I'm sorry, that's north. That will be fully visible from the street in the cul-de-sac.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now I understand.
So it's a side entry garage into the front of the
Yes.
house, but on the cul-de-sac, it looks like it's a front entry.
Thank you.
Was there any discussion about putting more brick on that side?
We may want to recommend it. It depends on if we, think aesthetically. I don't have any pictures of it, like what the finishes will look like, or drawings. We have the schematics, but like I don't know if we have any or if we've received anything, Carlos, that weren't online as far as, artist renderings that would show the color and texture of the materials.
I personally don't feel strongly, but I'm curious about what other commission members have to say.
I would agree. No strong feelings either way.
I would agree.
Mr.
Commissioner
Chairman, I'd
agree.
like to see the side view again.
Yeah,
it's broken up, to some extent. So it's really just a matter of, how much value we would place on that.
Don, on the left side to the garage, is that brick on the return? Is that what we're seeing there? Right there, yes. Is that brick?
Yes.
Yes.
That is brick. So they've got, so they're showing it on the other side. Okay.
I'm so sorry. My dog's got his squeaky toy. I don't know if you can hear it. It's all I can hear.
We can hear, but that's
Okay.
okay. So I think it really looks okay. I mean, I like the fact that they put some brick and wrapped it around from the front. There's a lot of diversity and articulation on this side. And
did they wrap it around on the other side too? I don't remember seeing that on the cross section.
I
No.
don't believe it was. Yeah, no.
I'm
So is there
just,
any brick on the front?
the lower level, I believe, is all brick.
Correct. That took me a second too, because it was all contiguous. I asked Carlos about that, but it does say at the bottom that it's a brick.
Do we think can we show the elevation view of the south face?
You should have that in front of your screens now.
Yeah.
Okay,
This part here is the garage projection.
okay, that makes
This
sense.
is the patio, the porch cover,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then this is the front facade. And then it's just a brick ledge here with the siding along there. And then note, we don't allow the foundation
Right.
exposure. That's going to be a standard comment.
I was considering, discussing a wraparound on this side, but quite frankly, I don't think it gains us anything. I'm not sure if how everyone else feels, but that's my thoughts. If we're done on this, I just have one other question, and I know when the stormwater was discussed for the neighborhood wide, it was all based on estimated square footage or estimated size of the house. How does this new house compare to that estimate?
It would
Because-
fall under.
Good. Okay. Good. That's all the questions I have. Does anybody else have any questions?
Can I ask a question, Commissioner?
You got it. Go ahead.
This would fall under, if they made any additions or anything, this would require detention, correct, after the fact?
That is correct. So if they added on to this house, detention would be required for that additional increment. The other things that would be impacted if they placed a shed or a pool that exceeded 400 square feet, they would have to provide, some type of BMP for that water retention.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, is there anybody from the petitioner who's available, and does he want to say anything?
Okay, if there's anybody that would like to speak in regards to this agenda item, I will transfer you over, and I do have the developer, Mr. Freeman, Mr. Freeman, I am going to promote you to panelist. And Mr. Freeman, if you can make sure you have your mic on and your video, and then state your name and address.
Looks like you're muted still.
You're still muted, Mr. Freeman. There you go.
We can't hear you right now. We're not hearing you. I wonder if you have a microphone or a speaker, setting that's maybe incorrect, or maybe your headphones are picking up.
So Mr. Freeman, I would advise on the lower left-hand corner of the Zoom screen, you'll see how to select a microphone. You'll see the little mute with an arrow on the side. You should be, it's still not accessing your audio.
Well, I know we're having some technical difficulties, but I also don't think we have any significant comments. Maybe if he wants to say something, maybe he could use the chat method if there's something it's specific that he wants to mention or clarify.
Because we can't record the chat, we don't have that option on. Because you can have discussion that then takes place without being on the record. So we've disabled that.
Okay.
Can he go off and try to relink on if he can hear us?
That might be one route, Mr. Freeman. And again, on the lower left-hand side of the Zoom screen, there's the little mute microphone, and right beside it to the right is an arrow pointing upward. If you click that arrow at the very top of that menu that pops up, you can select your microphone. There's usually 3 that are listed there, and it may be that it's picking up some Bluetooth or some other audio device.
There you go.
There you go, sir.
There you go. Can you hear us now? We just heard you a little while ago, Mr. Freeman.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
can.
Yes, we can.
Hello?
Yes. Can you hear us?
I can barely hear you now.
We can hear you.
Okay, I can barely hear you, but
Well, thank you for being on the panel, if you can hear us. So if there's anything specific that you want to add or talk about, that would be great. We appreciate it.
not a problem. Thank you very much. Sorry about the technical difficulties. When you're showing the brick on the front elevation, you can go across the front and it also goes up on the second story. And if you're looking on that south elevation, and the way it's set up with the siding above, I can't really turn the brick on that left side on that first floor. But if you notice that on the garage that's extending forward on the house, that's all completely brick.
Good, good, good. I think that makes sense. Okay, well, thank you very much. Anybody else on the commission have any specific questions for Mr. Freeman? Not seeing any. So we appreciate you being on, Mr. Freeman. I think what we'll do now is just ask to see if there's any public comments related to this.
Thank you very much.
Carlos?
If anybody would like to speak in regards to this agenda item, again, if you can show your hand on your Zoom screen, it should be at the center of the lower part of the window. And at this point, Chairman, I see none. If you can just give me a couple more seconds.
No, that'd be fine.
All right, Chairman. I recognize a couple of the individuals in there, but nobody's raising their hand. So I think we're set.
Okay, great. So now I'll go back to the commission members. If there's no further discussion, do I hear a motion?
Bear
Mr.
with me one
Chairman?
second, Chairman. I'll get that up in the, it should be up in the monitor. No, it's not. There you go.
All right, go ahead, Carol.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
Go
I'd
ahead.
like to motion to approve the petition for community design and concept stormwater management plan review for a new single-family home at 533 Long Acres Lane, as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development on January 20th, 2022, subject to staff conditions noted therein. And we have,
I'm sorry,
I'm sorry?
Commissioner Wagner, but just to note, before a second is done to that motion, if the commission is fine without the additional brick on that north elevation, just to note that in the motion.
so I think I think the commission is satisfied with the drawings as shown with no additional brick.
And
And,
that is sufficient. Thank you.
okay,
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Carol Wagner, seconded by Mr. Lewis. Carlos, will I please call the vote?
Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approve.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approve.
Commissioner Rich,
Approve.
Commissioner Wagner,
yes,
Chairman Dragell,
Approved.
and the motion passes unanimously 5-0.
Good, good. Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Appreciate you
Thank you
being
very
on.
much. Sorry for the problems.
No worries.
Take care.
Carlos, let me know when you're ready, and then we'll move on to new business.
Bear with me one second, and you should be set, sir.
Okay, great. So we'll move on to new business. Item A, Olivet Townhouses redevelopment project. These are located 1115 Dealman Road up to 1161 Dealman Road. Petition type is rezoning, including conceptual master plan, site plan, community design, and concept stormwater reviews for a 2.824 acre townhouse development consisting of 35 units. Petitioner is Doug Cohen with Douglas Dealman LLC. Property owner says Various under contract. So Carlos.
Chairman, we received the petition for the redevelopment of 2.8 acres on the west side of Dealman, kind of nestled between the Castlegate Villas to the north and the Jiffy Lube business on the south along Olive. It consists of approximately, I believe, 8 homes in there, and the proposal is to rezone the property grounds, which are currently SR single family residential, to city center, CC City Center District, and develop 35 townhouses in that 2.8 acre area that would consist of 7 building structures that contain 5 units or 5 townhouses apiece. in there. There would be a total of 70 parking spaces. Of those spaces, 2 are within a garage structure, and 2 are right behind the garage area. And the units range from a little under 2,500 to about 2,700 square feet in there. So when we receive an application for review, we assess it in terms of the city's 2006 comprehensive plan and the subsequent amendments that we've done through that plan, whether it's the Olive Corridor Conceptual Master Plan, to the Catalyst Strategy for the Olive Boulevard Corridor, and determine whether it furthers the visions and the goals of the plan itself. And in this case, I'm going to go through a quick scenario on this. Dealman Road is right here that runs parallel with the slide, and it would be a looped road that goes around the development, and you can see the 7 building structures that are spaced apart through either a common green area or an interior parking court in there. There's 2 accesses off the Dealman Road, one to the north and one to the south. Then there's a potential cross access for any future development opportunities that could happen, or improvements to Indian Trail access to provide a secondary access point onto Dealman Road in there. So the process for this type of development is that it goes through a concept review to initiate the rezoning, and that's what we are starting today. Concept review generally adopts a conceptual master plan, and then there's also a plating occurrence that takes place, as these would be individual units. The developer will talk about or get into more whether they're condo units or they're individual land units. There are planning procedures within our code, and both the rezoning and the plating procedures require city council action. So the commission just forwards recommendations to the council on those items. And then there are what should be our community design reviews. So prior to the application for a permit for a building, each individual building goes through the city's standard community design review, or our architectural review. For the review of a conceptual, for the review of a rezoning petition, along with planning, the commission has 120 days to review the application and forward a recommendation. That recommendation goes to council, and then the council usually has approves or takes action on the development by ordinance, and an ordinance requires 2 readings. And since this is a land use decision, it also will require a public hearing before any final vote is taken by the council. So again, the process, when we take a look at the development, we review it in terms of its consistency with our 2006 comprehensive plan. We ensure that, is it consistent with the city's vision? In this case, it's part of what they was envisioned as a city center district, which extended from Dealman Road on westward to about Indian Meadows, trying to create a somewhat of a interconnected town center, and how that vision meets and its development meets the goals of our comprehensive plan, which is regarding our community identity, which is about our walkability, streetscapes, gathering spaces, and how it balances the transitions between adjacent neighborhoods, our economic development, that it takes advantage of scale, provides mixed housing opportunities, and furthers the goals and objectives of the 39 North and the Innovation District just to the west of us. How it supports transportation connections, not just for vehicles, but also for pedestrian and multimodal purposes. How it uses the right-of-way, how it improves sidewalks, how it encourages cross-access to improve vehicle management along the Olive Boulevard corridor. And then takes advantages of open spaces, how again, using the right-of-way, creating gathering spaces, how it improves buffers and provides interconnectivity to its surroundings. The code sections that are involved in this type of review include our zoning regulations, our subdivision regulations, our stormwater management regulations, and our community design regulations, both under Chapter 425 and 428. This does fall under the Olive Boulevard overlay corridor, and it is subject to the site planning, the streetscape, the building material, the landscaping, and the lighting regulations under Chapter 428. As we go through the review and review the zoning regulations, we believe that this best fits the city center district. That being said, it would require a site plan review, and of course, it addresses off-street parking in there. So when you do a site plan review, the goal of a site plan review is to assess the development to make sure that all reasonable steps have been taken to minimize negative effects of the development upon its surrounding built environment and within itself, and that it addresses, provisions for public utilities, visual buffering, parking, traffic, noise, pedestrian, convenience and safety, landscaping, open spaces, signs, and other impacts on public facilities and public incomes. And these last two are somewhat archaic and very hard to judge, but they are part of that code in its review. Within parking, remember the zoning ordinance requires for a dwelling of this type 2 parking stalls per unit, and that's what's being proposed is 4 stalls per unit. The commission has, in the site plan review, the ability to address concerns as it talked about at the last meeting regarding whether any additional off-street parking would be necessary. The other thing that it addresses is regarding the widths of the alleys or the street corridors that are within that subdivision, which can range from 16 feet to 22 feet. Many of those will be dictated by access for fire apparatuses. And I think the developer will get into a little bit more detail with some revisions that have been received. For platting, generally, it's a 2-step process. There's a preliminary plat and there's a final plat that will probably go in conjunction with the rezoning request. There would be some city attorney participation as the developer defines the common and shared spaces and how they will be used. And then, of course, when we do platting, there are restrictions on requirements for access and street width and for common strips for the property. Stormwater management is reviewed by the city, but overall, the detention of that stormwater and how it's purified is through the Metropolitan Sewer District. That is an agency that will be involved in the review. We haven't received any preliminary comments from them as of yet, but it looks under the proposal, they'll be forwarding to MSD that the detention will be underground, and it appears that it'll be on the north side of the site. And I didn't see anything specifically illustrated regarding BMP areas yet, but we're still reviewing the plan set as we go through. On Chapter 425, and that's an important complex component of the review process, is the community design. And we look at the public areas, the transitions, the streetscapes, the materials, the landscaping, and the lighting. And in this case, they haven't identified any lighting on the development or what would be proposed, but those are the items that the commission will have the developer address as we go through the process. In that process, there are the identified minimum standards, and then there are the standards that the commission will consider as we go through the review if any changes are necessary. But those require justifications and are part of the discussion as we go through in there. We did sit with the developer to talk about specific issues that we would have with the development that's submitted. This item was initially received right towards the end of the year. It's been posted on our website it's a sizable development, and we're going through the review. They've given us quite a bit of information, and based on that information, some of the things we've identified are, addressing the sidewalk condition along Buellman, further defining the transition area and the screen walls that would happen both on the north and west portions of the development, and to look at, the activities that take place along these sidewalks as becoming gathering spaces, consistent with the objectives of the strategic plan. To take a look at those illustrations that identify what the city's looking to look at Chapter 428 for the criteria that needs to be involved in their design. We talked about this cross access, both vehicular and pedestrian. They have had a sit down with the city's fire chief and assistant fire chief to talk about apparatus movement. And again, the developer has submitted some revisions. I'll let them address what changes have been incorporated, because there was some concerns of ensuring that a fire vehicle could get in through this development. When they initially started with the process and sat down with the fire department, the assumption was that any major fire would be addressed primarily on Diehlmann Road. But as we went through that analysis, there are electrical utility lines that run right along the curb of Diehlmann Road that would impede any ladder truck assistance that we would have. So it became essential that they provide the necessary space and turning radiuses to go in there. And they have addressed those. And again, those will be identified later by the petitioner. The other thing I think is essential is for the commission to have, while they did provide a street elevation with some cross-section information, I think it's important that there are specific areas that we get more detail that identifies not just what's going on within the development area, but how it's impacting the adjacent properties, what are the heights, and what are the transitions that would be taking place within these. I think on the western side, where you abut detached single-family residential units, that at least 3 cross-sections should be necessary to run from the existing houses on Indian Trails all the way to the building edges, and then at least 1 on the north and south side, similar to what you see here, but more detailed. I think the commission trying to make an assessment on something that is that small just isn't sufficient to do a review and determine that the spacing and the sizes are consistent with those that are required by code. Some of the things that would be necessary is that to assess this as part of the city center district, we will require a code amendment to include the element of townhouses in there. Right now, it is silent in addressing townhouses, but part of its intent and part of the vision of the city center district is to have housing units available similar to what they're showing here. And in that site, so a potential code amendment would be part of that process. And there, at that point, that kind of identifies where we are from the staff review. And again, just to kind of note that we analyze the development first and foremost of whether it furthers the vision of the 2006 comprehensive plan, and we feel that the development in terms of what is being proposed, not necessarily the design, is consistent with the vision. That being said, then we focus on our 4 core values or objectives. How does it improve community development? Is it unique, balanced, mixture, multi-use? How does it improve economic development, scale to height, taking advantage of the limited spaces we have as a developed community? How does it address open spaces, both the public realm, greenways and connections? And how does it address transportation connections? Again, the network connectivity and multimodal. The review process consists of the commission, which would take action on a concept and forward a recommendation to the city council. The city council, again, has the final say in approving the concept master plan through the rezoning process. Following that, individual buildings will come back to the commission solely just for their community design review in there. There are outside agencies that will impact this process of review that we would need some guidance in there. And I'm sure the developer and his team has reached out to those. One will be St. Louis County. They have jurisdiction over Diehlmann Road, and they have certain standards that any access point on the roadway has to meet in there. We had some issues with the city center that we developed, the new city hall facilities regarding some of the slopes and curvatures of that road in there. They're going to probably have to address the same thing. And then, of course, the Metropolitan Sewer District on how stormwater is detained on the site grounds. And we would expect preliminary comments to be provided by those agencies before the commission takes any action. We did take a look at some density patterns of adjacent properties just for reference for the commission. This development, as proposed, is 12.4 units per acre. In comparison, the Oliver, which is a multi-family development and multi-story, the 5 stories, has 64.2 units per acre. Castlegate Villas to the north has 5.9 units per acre. Older developments within the city center district, that means between Dealman and Indian Meadows, north of Olive. Indian Trails has 23.1 units per acre. Tower Hill has 7.4 units per acre, and Olive Village has 16.3 units per acre. So the 12.4 unit per acre is being proposed by the developer. It seems to be roughly in line with the lower average, removing the Oliver or the Indian Trail apartments in there. We did look at traffic. St. Louis County has vehicle traffic information on their website. The average weekly traffic on Dealman heading north from Olive is roughly 6,500 vehicles per day. Southbound from Page, it's roughly about 9,000 vehicles per day. The peak times are between 4 and 5 p.m., which is not out of the ordinary. And at that time, you can have roughly about 800 vehicles in each direction throughout those travel hours. Again, for staff, I think the Dealman streetscape needs to be further refined and developed as this development review process goes through. As you can see along here, having that sidewalk separation, having the articulation of the wall, having some type of community or gathering space or public element that enhances that or makes it exciting. Utility poles do run along the curb area here. The assumption is that they will remain through that process. That addresses the public realm component of that. We would be also needing more information on how these transition areas work. There is a landscape plan that has been provided, but again, Chapter 428 identifies the acceptable minimum standard for providing that buffer. On the west side, it's a 10-foot landscape area that includes a 6-foot screen wall. On the north side, it's a 5-foot landscape area that includes a 6-foot screen wall that would be necessary for those. And the only way to really assess and determine the details of those buffers is to get some additional cross sections for the commission to review. At this point, Chairman, I'd be glad to answer any specific questions on the development. I know I have the developer and his team is online, but first, if the commission has questions or would like to discuss it amongst itself.
Anybody on the commission have any questions specifically for Carlos? Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, Carlos, I agree with your general comments of kind of needing more. And I'm also, the parking, which we talked about last time, which it sounds like it'll continue to be addressed. I'm also curious about the letter from the subdivision next door in terms of what their comments, does that come into play now or more when we actually know more? Because otherwise we're reacting to things that might change again.
I think they play a role. I know the developer has reached out to one of the trustee representatives to begin the discussions. Their comments are bringing forward, early on in the process to be taken into consideration and to provide some guidance and there. So I think in terms of how the process evolves is in the right direction. In no way am I saying that the adjacent subdivision would determine the design of this. There are already code standards for that, but I think we need to be sensitive of their concerns and determine if whether some additional increments in some of the design features need to be added to address some of those issues. The earlier we know now, the better.
Anybody else on the commission?
It seems like to me that there's a lot of information missing that we don't have. So hopefully we can hear some of that tonight at least.
One of the things I'll note, Chairman, just to make sure, because there are minimum submission standards that are outlined in the code, and and those have been submitted. With that, then we take a look and make decisions of whether we need more information here or there. And I think that's what Commissioner Spiegelglass is addressing. Given what we know now, we'd like to see more or have a specific concern to those. So I just don't want it being assumed that the plans were incomplete. They are enough to get us to the next step of the review process.
Carol, go ahead.
Yes. When we were talking about gathering places in green space internal to the site, are we referring to having an area of a playground area or a sitting area outside? Is that?
No, there's different options that the designer can take into consideration. For instance, as you are, and bear with me here, as you're walking along the Dealman sidewalk, this is not consistent with Chapter 428. Chapter 428 is looking for a sidewalk that has some excitement, some differentiation, some color, some ample space, maybe at every entrance, to identify the connection with the public realm. Then there is the spaces within the developments themselves. Now these become private spaces and more impact they impact the public that's along Dealman Road. But we'd like to see, how are those developed? And they do provide those landscape plans showing or illustrating that those central courts for the commission to review and assess. From a staff perspective, that's great, but that's private. Our emphasis is more on what is accessible to the public. And again, when you look at those spaces in here, this is what the public is going to walk along. We don't find that, consistent with Chapter 428. And again, that's just a vignette to provide you some massing and information. As we get further into the details of the plan, the expectation is that this is going to evolve more, and we're going to see more detail and design consideration for that streetscape. Does that answer your question, Carol? Sorry, it was kind of.
Yes, it does. It does. I just wanted to clarify.
And the other thing I want to note, those gathering in public spaces, those spaces do include the buffers. I mean, we want to see what's going on there. Where is that screen wall? How are the adjacent fences being addressed? What type of trees are going to be used? You do have a landscape plan that's part of that packet. But again, there's also Chapter 428. They're not designed in accordance with Chapter 428. They're going to have to incorporate those minimum standards. Then with the detailed cross sections, we can start to assess, and be more sensitive to the comments of the adjacent property owners. We don't know what some of these grades are, or what the significance of putting a screen wall at a higher height or a lower height, whether if it's going to have the intent or purpose to do, or whether there are other options or alternatives to consider that would be more acceptable or palatable to adjacent properties. What happens here on the south side of the site may not necessarily be required on the north side of the site because of topography changes. So, those are the things we want to take a look at. And at this point, I think we need more detail along those sections. And if the detail is in that landscape plan, it's not consistent with Chapter 428.
Carlos, did the fire department have any concern about the number of cars that are going to be coming on and off Dealman with their emergencies, that they have to?
No, that was not
Gotcha.
noted when we had the sit-down review. Most of the discussion took place regarding the circulation, the internal circulation access to the development. But no comments were noted or specifically to where the firehouse apron is at.
And then the aprons now, they don't line up with any of the aprons, you know, across the street. Is that going to, provide any traffic issues or,
Not necessarily from the fire chief's perspective. From a quick initial review, he did acknowledge that, and it's offset as being as not being a concern. Where we're unaware yet is whether the county will have issues, because there is a lot of grade change along that road, and we had a tough time trying to locate our aprons. It's only here. This does not exist, I think. And then the main entrance here. Because of the slope of the roads in there, they were very.
I thought that apron was for Walgreens.
Yeah, and then you're right. Then this is our main entrance, and this is the Walgreens. So I apologize.
Right.
In there. So we had a tough time in here, because I believe right here is a crest in the road in there, but that road then quickly dips down on both sides, and the county has it's a standard that they're going to have to follow. It's not like it's unknown, but the county does have a standard diagram for use to determine whether the vision triangle, I think is the term that they use, is met or exceeded.
And with those traffic counts, I don't think we're anywhere close to capacity, on that. And I don't think this development would impact those counts significantly. But have you guys looked at that? I just want to verify.
Yes, it is. It's my opinion that no, that a traffic study wouldn't be warranted given the volume that would be generated on that site. And we also know from the county level, they'll make that final decision if there's one necessary. The county has submitted has received a grant for improvements on Dealman Road, and to accommodate that traffic that they have on there, all they're doing is resurfacing the road. They did not find the need to expand Dealman Road at all, or restripe. They looked at putting a 4-lane similar to what is north of the railroad tracks as you get towards Page, but did not see the need along this section. The other thing from the city's perspective is that we do have, and you saw that 4 and 5 o'clock hour is the peak times of the week. In that interval, as people are getting up, there is a tendency for cars to back up all the way up to the Walgreens entrance, and sometimes pending if there are other traffic issues on Olive, it will extend all the way to our entrance here in there. So the city has initiated discussion with the county about extending the center turning lane, so there'd be more queuing opportunities on there. And then of course, we've always talked with them, which really is the Missouri Department of Transportation determined the length of time that left turn light allows you to go through Dealman Road across Olive Boulevard.
Anybody else have any questions for Carlos at this time?
Chairman, I have a couple questions.
Go ahead, Carol.
First, Carlos, has the school district been notified that we're talking about subdivision of a number of units here?
No, I haven't notified them, and I don't intend to. That might be something that the council may want to talk to them. This is not a project that's looking out for any incentives for development, and I don't think that the school district should be dictating, the density levels of our 2006 comprehensive plan. To be frank,
No, I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking it'd be a nice courtesy.
we can send notice, and they're unaware.
sure. Then my other question, which I'm more interested in is there, we've got the sidewalk that goes down to Olive Street Road. I'm just thinking about the connectivity of this area to, say, park facilities or the trail. Is there a way that we could make those kinds of connections?
That's a good question. Let me go back here. I don't have a, let's see, screen one. Bear with me, and I'm hoping that this works well, that you'd be seeing a separate screen. And okay, you should be seeing the St. Louis County GIS mapping in here. There is a sidewalk along Jiffy Lube, and there is a sidewalk that extends all the way on the west side of Dealman, all the way north through town, all the way to Indian Meadows. Two things, that sidewalk connects with Olive Boulevard, which is one of our goals, to make sure we can connect to that corridor. It would extend along this development, and the city owns this parcel here. I'm going to get a little closer, so you're going to lose some here. And we just put a new trail within this segment of the city property. There is no sidewalk north of the city, the government center. However, we do now have a trail here that was not designed, but championed by Bruce McGregor, our public works director, that now runs through here. It's I think it's a 12-foot wide trail, consistent with that of the Great Rivers Greenway. His goal is to continue that trail into this property, which the city owns, which is right in the north side of the industrial park, and ultimately to provide a connection to the Centennial Trail that will run up here along Indian Meadows, and then somehow connect to the eastern side back to the railroad corridor, or to some extent to Dealman Industrial. We're still not sure how that phase of the development is. Again, there is a sidewalk already that exists on the west side of Dealman Road that runs at full length. So those connectivities exist. Redevelopment of this site gives us that opportunity to kind of make that connection a little bit more exciting and above that minimum standard. I believe the current sidewalk is right adjacent to the curb, and it's got several interruptions, including utility poles, the number of aprons that are along there, and mailboxes. So again, once we get back to, apologize.
Carlos, you went silent.
Oh, sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Once we get back to their design, and as we start looking at their proposal, just getting that sidewalk separation from the curb, again, providing some design creativity along this retaining wall and at these entrances will just enhance that experience that the pedestrian will go through, consistent with the objectives of the 2006 comprehensive plan.
Jody, you had a question?
Yeah, was there any discussion about making it one way in and one way out instead of having two-way traffic through the whole, from Dealman behind to whatever this new street's going to be called, behind Indian Trails, and then out between Castlegate and the development? I mean, this just seems like a lot of traffic. I mean, that would maybe give them some parking if they went one way only.
I'm not sure what it would change in the parking, honestly. Now, the width requirements pretty much stay the same, whether they're one directional or two directional, given that the fire apparatus is going to be at a specific width and require a specific thing. It'd be something up to the developer they want to consider.
Okay.
And there, but I understand, there are two issues that I think that that I hear from the commission and there, it's not necessarily the volume of the traffic. I hear more the concern of the excess parking, and that's a valid concern. In there, they are providing more stalls per unit, but the commission, looking at this as a townhouse development similar to the neighboring Castlegate, where it has a full street where you can have some street parking. In this case, and the developer will kind of show you in the revisions, and there may have been some changes or opportunities to provide some of that that street parking. We'll address that in there, but I think that's what you're trying to address, or are you concerned about the volume of traffic that would be generated?
No, it's the availability of parking as opposed to on these, each individual, like, 2 cars in the garage and 2 cars in behind the garage. It's going to be really tight. Coming from where I live,
At times,
it's hard.
It is a consistent message that has been repeated both by the adjacent properties and the commission, and I'll let the developer answer that.
Okay, if we don't have any more questions or comments, I think we should bring on the developer.
Mr. Cohen, I'm going to bring you up to panelists, and then if you can let me know on your design team who to transfer over. I see Amanda Norris. I also see Tyler Stevens and Ryan Holmes with Bowles.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you can. Mr. Cohen, if you can have your video turned on and then just state your name and address. And then again, regarding your development team, are you there, sir?
How's that?
All right, we can hear you and see you.
Excellent.
All right, I have Tyler, Amanda, Ryan, and
yeah, I have my all-star team here with us.
Okay.
So I'll just introduce myself as Doug Cohen, owner of Douglas Properties, and we're very excited about this project. I think in the rendering that you're showing, I know some information filtered in today, but there was a lot of added landscaping along those entrances on the sidewalks that I saw today. And I really think we're about 95% there. So on the next meeting, I think we'll be at 100% because we'll be adding some comments that we received tonight. But at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Tyler for the architectural. And then if there's any engineering questions, we'll refer to Ryan. And then Amanda can chime in as well. It's kind of difficult to, juggle talkers, obviously, on Zoom. So I think we'll turn it over to Tyler and he'll take it over from there. And hopefully the next time we all meet, it can be in person.
All right. Mr. Stevens, you should have the availability to show your monitor now. So, or else I can put the.
Great, thank you all and good evening. My name is Tyler Stevens. I'm with Corten Architecture and we are here representing Douglas Properties tonight. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and take you through our presentation of the material. You should be able to see it at this point. Okay, are you seeing it?
Yes, we are.
Okay, good. So hopefully this will address many of your questions. Just want to walk you through briefly. Obviously, you know where the site is. Directly across from City Hall. Just to give you a little bit of background about us, we at Corten Architecture, we do multifamily developments like this all over town. We've worked with Doug for many years. And ironically, we just completed a development strip right across the street from the Kirkwood City Hall, which is kind of similar in the idea of building across the street from city halls. So a lot of scrutiny here, and that's fine. But that gives you a little bit of who we are and what we've done in the past. As we look at this property here, Carlos did a good job of kind of describing how it fits in with the master plan. Certainly it is increasing the density of what is there today, but we're talking about a total of 35 townhouses. They're in in 7 buildings. Each building has 5 units clustered, and they are arranged around a series of courtyards as described. So you can see here in this plan how each of the 2 buildings will face a common courtyard. That's the entrance court. And then the backs line up around a driving court. So that's the organization of the site. The loop road that goes around the back, as was discussed, will provide access to the parking areas, the garages, but then also it allows for any emergency vehicles. It also allows for trash pickup, mail delivery, all of those various things happen in that loop road. Just real quickly, I will address one of the questions was about making that road a one-way in and one-way out. In general, creating a one-way loop through there actually makes the traffic a little worse. By having it be 2 ways, it gives everybody 2 options of how to get in and out. It was mentioned earlier that sometimes the turning traffic can stack up going out to Olive. So if you're trying to leave your unit on a particular time when you know that's going to happen, you can go to the north instead of the south. So 2 ways generally provide more options for people and thins out the traffic a little bit more than a one-way loop would. The dimensions of all those roads have been set according to the standards of the fire truck getting around. That's the kind of the widest vehicle that would be going through there. So we've made all the changes to that and have that kind of organized. The other thing that I'll say in regards to this particular plan here, when talking about the master plan, we're talking about connectivity from Dealman to Parts West. Carlos mentioned that this street here on the north side is set up as an access easement that could be further extended should that be desirable. In addition, in pedestrian access, these courtyards between the buildings, they were mentioned as being private. They're not really private. This is like a front yard for townhouses. So these are front yards that everybody walks out onto. They're within the development itself, but they're not gated, and the public has the ability to walk from Dealman through those. And then if anything further were developed to the west, those pedestrian access points could be stretched and continued on through. So by establishing a townhouse development like this, where the townhouses are perpendicular to the main road, which is a pattern that we've done before, it really provides a nice porous development that you can pass right through. And that is really the intention here. The last thing I'll point out here, and then I'll kind of blow this up closer so we can see some details, but these pedestrian courtyards that are in green, that are landscaped, are up at the first floor level, which is street level. The parking courts are recessed down into the ground. On this, you can see a shadow here. There's a retaining wall that goes along between each of the buildings because those parking areas enter at the basement level of the units. And so those are down below the street, so you kind of see over them. There's a lot of topography change in here. As I go into a detail of this site plan, you can see some of these things a little greater. Start with the parking court that we were just talking about. People who live here will pull in and then go to their individual garages. Each unit has its own 2-car garage located inside the building below in the basement level. The area behind it, this access driveway right here, has the ability to hold 2 guest parking spaces. So I realize that there's always a concern about how much parking will be available and can we get enough cars, but the ability to have 2 guest parking spaces for every single unit is actually, that's a very high guest parking ratio. So we have a lot of parking opportunities here on the site. So all of that is designed specifically to keep the cars off the street and out of this traffic flow so that it doesn't impede it visually with cars parked everywhere, certainly impede the circulation of any vehicles trying to get around. So we've got all the guest parking and the unit parking organized in this traffic court in a pretty efficient manner. The transition to the west, we'll talk about that a little bit with the neighborhood to the west. It was mentioned that we need to have a 10-foot landscape buffer. That is this green area that you see right here going from the property line to a retaining wall that runs all along the back access drive. So that area is fully landscaped, and you can see that in your landscape plans that are submitted. That's the 10-foot buffer. We have the wall, the retaining wall that runs along there, which is also doubles as trash enclosures. We can take trash and put it in an alcove in the wall, which makes it nice and hidden, keeps it looking clean. And then from there, you have the access street itself, which is required to be 20 feet wide. There's an additional 3.5-foot sidewalk on the back of the building, and then the building starts. So all of that is to serve as the transition to the west and those various layers and things that needed to be added in. When you come out to Dealman Road, then the layers that you find there, first of all, each unit faces the court on the inside, with the exception of the last unit to the east. This is a pattern that we've used in other developments, and it really improves the aesthetic of townhouses when you take the end unit and you rotate the entrance around to the main street. This helps the building turn the corner and makes it so that the development has street faces, street elevations that face the main road, creating a streetscape all along Dealman. Those units will have porches and sidewalks that come off of them, and then they will have a front yard, which is also landscaped, coming out to another retaining wall. And this wall then holds that yard elevated above Dealman. That gives a little bit of privacy to the unit itself, helps to separate it from the road. Then once we get down below the wall, we've actually held that wall off of the property line by an additional 5 feet. That is in order to provide more landscaping along the sidewalk than is required. You have the 6-foot sidewalk and then the tree lawn beyond that. So all of this is to provide a lot of different landscaping buffers and zones from the road up to the building. And we think that all of that will look very nice and create a good pedestrian pathway going along there. I have a couple sections for you. The street section you sort of saw before. This shows just how the buildings go along the street. And you can see a lot of topography change in Dealman. It's a road that has a lot of ups and downs in it. So the buildings kind of follow that, and that retaining wall helps to mitigate some of that elevation change. The buildings that we are talking about are 2-story buildings, though, not unlike a single family house. I know that the houses to the west, which you can see here in this east-west section, here's one of those. They are 1-story houses, so they are, those particular houses are shorter, but typical houses, 2 stories is not atypical of a residential house. And that's what this height is. So we're not talking about tall buildings here. These are not large scale apartment structures by any means. They're simply townhouses that mimic single families connected together. In this east-west section, you can see how the property changes from Dealman onto the property line where the sidewalk area would be, that front yard retaining wall, the raised front yard, the building going along. In the back, you see the access drive, and then this retaining wall that I talked about where the trash enclosures are contained. Then there's the landscape buffer, the 10-foot above that, and then you can see kind of a distance from that line back to the houses where they line up and their relative scale. So that section should help give you a little bit better understanding of the transition between us and the neighborhood to the west. Not that this is relevant to a whole lot, but just in case you're wondering, these are the typical floor plans. The basement down here on the right, which has the parking garage, the 2 cars in it that I was talking about. Then you can see the 2-car guest space behind it. The main floor is living areas and the second floor is bedrooms. Pretty typical of most townhouse plans. These are some elevations similar to what's in your packet, just gives you a little bit of color, maybe a little easier to see here. This first one is a section through the courtyard, so you can see the entrances and the front elevations of the buildings themselves. The second one down here is on the parking court, where you see the basement exposed because that court again is lower by a story below the other elevation. And then the sides, both the front and back. On the ends of the units, we are wrapping with brick front and back. You can see here on the back facing west, it's all a brick facade. Facing Dealman, it's a combination of brick and siding to create some variety on that and make a nice street facade. And then finally, the rendering puts it all together for you. This rendering shows a little bit of what's happening here in terms of letting you see the differentiation between the street and the sidewalk, the wall, those landscaping areas, and then the stairs that rise up to it. As was mentioned, if the city wants to see additional space in here, we're certainly welcome to do that. We have these abilities where the stairs are intersecting the sidewalk, and that's the opportunity for that. But we do also have what you don't see in this rendering. There are street trees going down here, additional landscaping all along the wall. Really, the landscaping plan is the plan that you should be referring to with regard to all of that. So all in all, I mean, we think that this is a good opportunity to build out some of the master plan that is within the city of Olivet. And this will set kind of a nice bar of quality for Dealman and provide the start of these developments. With that, I will take any questions if you have any. And I can stop sharing my screen, or I can keep it on in case you want to see it.
Why don't you keep it on for now, just in case anybody, the commission members have a comment that you can go back, refer back to.
Okay.
Any members of the commission have a specific question for Tyler at this time? Tyler, I have one question, and that's regarding the elevation change between the kind of with the street. Is that, at the mail area, is that going to be level with the courtyard in the between the buildings?
Yes, the mail area, which you see right here, is in the courtyard. We are required to have a little bit of a parking area next to where you stop for your mailboxes. That happens right here where you see the word mail. And then this rectangle is the group of mailboxes itself. So it's in the courtyard.
So, on the left of building one, you're going to be at the basement level. Then you're going to rise to the first level. And then you're going to go back down. Is that right? Back to.
Yes, that is correct. There is elevation change on that back street that takes you up and down those increments. It's not a full story, so it's not as dramatic as it might seem, because these courtyards are not at the first floor. There's a raised porch and steps for each of the units, so they're about halfway between.
Okay. But is that transition going to take place, at the turns, or, where do you see that elevation change on the street?
It happens in two places. It happens a little bit in the driveway itself. So there's a little bit of increase coming out of the garage. And then most of it happens along the back of each of these buildings. So
Okay.
from this point to that point, essentially.
Okay. And that rise and fall would, I guess, essentially help control the speed of cars driving
Yes,
back there.
it does.
Okay, interesting. Do the decks vary in size also? Is that what I'm seeing? Or, the squares behind each of the units?
Yes, I know it's showing that way right now. I'm not sure that these front units will have a deck this large.
Okay.
We started by wanting to have the front unit be a little bit of an upgraded unit. But with the clearance of the car coming underneath, I'm not sure we have the ability to make it quite that large, but this is relatively speaking what you're going to see, yes.
Okay. Any other commission members have any further comments or questions? Go ahead, Tim.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. So and I'm not sure if there's a question for Carlos or not, are they allowed to have that trash buffer in the green space?
Carlos, you're muted if you don't know.
No, that 10-foot buffer would require that, it be just a landscaped area only. Now, within the code, the commission has some authority to grant some leniency based on whether there are any specific design considerations or topography things that would mitigate that. So at this point, again, without further detail, it's kind of hard to tell. But Chapter 428 would require the full 10 feet of landscape area. And I think, though, it's hard to tell because the wall can be within that 10-foot range, and it looks like the space there is a little over 12 feet. So it's really hard to tell where that 10-foot is going to, would end once measured from the rear property or from that west property line.
Just a comment on that. You're right that the total space is 12 feet across there. The wall currently is set at 10, and those trash enclosures are about half and half. They're about 4 to 5 feet deep. So you're talking about an additional 3 feet, let's say, coming out of the 10. So it is narrowed down behind it. However, I would point out that if we don't do that, then the trash ends up out in the driveway where it looks much more junky, to be honest. Having it built into the wall and hidden in the landscaping is a good way to mitigate the visual impact of that trash.
And within the code, again, I stress that the commission has flexibility for that consideration. But it's the show me thing, the show me state. We need more detail to kind of, the commission needs more detail to make that decision.
And just keep in mind, Tyler, too, you got a person's backyard that's behind there. You don't want that to be, becoming smelly or anything like that, or attract rodents or things like that as well. So.
And then another question is, what about the turning radius for the trash the trash guys that come around and pick it up? How are they going to actually pick up that trash in that corner?
It will be designed, and I'm not sure if you're talking about at the extreme edges where I don't believe there is none, but that road from a planning perspective is well oversized only because it meets the conditions for a ladder truck to run through, which is going to be larger than the trash truck in there. So I don't see that. I know the fire chief had sent over some template information that might be something where they can kind of illustrate the fire truck in there. And once you see the size, the trash truck's much smaller.
Yes. Sorry, Carlos. I should have been more specific. Usually trash trucks with these come in perpendicular to the actual trash cans is how that works. So I was just, I've seen them take it out before and then put them on the side and everything like that. Everything ends up getting damaged and, you're waiting for that trash truck to get by. So I think that's something to consider as well.
Okay.
These particular trash trucks, the way this is designed is much like an alley system. The trash trucks actually load from the side. They pull up to the side of a dumpster and then it goes over the top. So they don't have to actually roll them out or anything. And to give a little bit of perspective on size, alleys are typically 15 feet wide. So this is an additional 5 feet wider than that would be necessary.
That's great. Perfect. I didn't know that. And then my only other comment is still about the parking. It's definitely a concern for me at least. I understand it's 2 spots of guest parking, but you know, I had family over the other night and there's 6 cars outside of my front yard. I'm not sure where the other 4 cars would have gone in any part. So that is definitely a concern for me.
One thing when I mentioned earlier that we were just doing this development in Kirkwood and similar across the street from City Hall. The City Hall parking lot is a public parking lot. And one thing that works, and I'm not, please don't think that I'm trying to say you guys are just like Kirkwood, but it works well for the City Hall parking lot is a public parking lot at night. That is open and nobody's required to park there. So anybody who wants to have a big party has ample guest parking right across Steelman Road.
Carlos, would that be an issue for all of that?
It is public parking, but you know, I always look at the, you know, while we talk about, you know, taking a holistic view of developments and how they integrate with their surroundings, we also kind of look inward too. And there, you know, again, the parking is, the minimums are met. The commission, again, because of the site plan review process, does look at what are the external effects that can happen. Yes, the City Hall facilities are across the street, but not necessarily designed or intended for other uses. They, you know, we meet the minimum standard that's required for the assembly areas within our facility. You know, well, I understand what they're saying, and it's a reasonable tie to that excess parking. You know, we shouldn't make the assumption that it's going to be available at those times or so. And it's something I think that, you know, again, is worth more discussion. And I respect the commission's view. I look at it in terms of just the numbers, and again, they far exceed what is required by the code. We always have this thing where we're always trying to get people to put less parking, but now we're kind of looking at it from, well, we're going to now need more parking. And there's reasonable, because now we're talking about a different type of density but you know, a long way to avoid directly answering that question.
The other thing, Carlos, is that, you know, when you're looking at parking spaces, a lot of times we're talking about shared parking.
Mhm.
And these parking, they're essentially the 2 extra spaces are private parking, because it's unlikely you're going to, you know, have one of your guests park in you know, the backspace of the adjacent townhouse, you know, unless you talk to them or, you know, work something out. And good neighbors could be good neighbors, you know, for that. So I do see some need for some community or common parking. I don't know. Carol, you had a.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that we actually use our City Hall parking for meetings at night. I don't know that it's full, but it depends on a lot of what's on the agenda and how much, you know, participation there might be that evening from the community. So I don't know that saying that it's available as a parking lot is really appropriate when we really do use that parking lot at night.
Okay, any other discussions? Tyler, I had a quick question, and it was Carlos mentioned about the utility poles. Where on this plan are those utility poles?
The exact location, I don't
Just
know.
rough, kind
Yeah,
of.
out there on Dealman Road, you see the property line, which is right here at the back of the sidewalk.
Mhm.
So right now, the sidewalk is against the curb and the utility poles are running right through that. So it's It's in that general area of this street setback or streetscape that's up here. Our intent by pulling the sidewalk off the curb is to get them away from those utility poles and to be able to plant street trees.
Okay, so they'll be on the street side of the sidewalk.
I wish I could say what's specific, where that line is. I could try to bring up the civil plan if that's something that you want to see more specifically.
Well, I'd be curious. Yeah,
Chairman, I can show you a Google streetscape if that's all right.
yeah, that'd be great.
All right.
Yeah, that might.
Connor, I'm going to go ahead and stop the share. If that's okay.
Yes.
And then bear with me 1 second, Chairman.
Yes, you can see them right at the back of that sidewalk, which is essentially our sidewalk moves to the other side of the pole then in essence there, because what is sidewalk here becomes tree lawn, and then our sidewalk is right behind that.
So you're gonna put the trees underneath the poles?
Well, that is often what happens in a streetscape with street trees. The utility poles are kind of in the way in all of that.
The goal, Chairman, would be, and I have to take a little bit more detailed look at the species that are called out in that landscape plan. Correct. A tree that's going to grow in height would not fit within that realm of that streetscape. But an ornamental tree, or to low shrubbery, that provides some amenity, some safety, some sense of safety to the pedestrian, is more than welcome along that street curb. It doesn't have to be, a trunk tree. It could be some shrubbery, or really ideally too would be to utilize some BMP type of scenarios that take advantage of being sustainable and also provide that variety.
I think if you notice on the landscape plan, that's one reason why what's called out there are dogwoods as the street tree going all along, which dogwoods are a good understory tree. They don't get real tall. They spread out nice and wide and would give you that buffer between the cars and the people.
Any idea what the height is of that lowest line?
I'm going to say about 15 feet, if just kind of based on the height of the
trash can.
Yeah, I would have said 14 because that's a standard truck clearance. So
there you go.
Yeah. Okay.
And further, just sorry not to belabor this, but further on the landscape plan, the street trees that they're showing are actually shown on the back side of the sidewalk behind that, rather than out on the tree lawn, for that reason of the power poles being there.
Makes sense. Anybody else have any specific questions? Go ahead, Carol.
Yes, I'd like to talk a little bit more detail about the buffer between the development and the homes behind. Particularly, are you thinking that you're going to put some vegetation in that buffer area, and how's that going to be maintained?
Yes, here I believe Carlos has the landscape plan up so everybody can see it now. That 10-foot buffer is fully planted with various types of trees and bushes And all of that is part of the maintenance of it is all part of this development. There will be landscaping all around the development that is maintained by the homeowners association. You can also see here the indents of the trash and how, even though it does go into that 10-foot buffer, it doesn't really impede the landscaping. It doesn't really alter it all that much because the landscaping fits right around those little alcoves.
Are you going to have a housing, around the trash units themselves, kind of like some visual shielding, or is that just going to be exposed?
Well, that's the retaining wall. The wall itself going through there it varies in height from around 3 to 4 feet tall. So it acts as a fencing almost around the dumpsters themselves.
Commissioner, did you mean in front though, from the residents?
Yeah.
Oh, on the street side. We're not showing anything on the street side simply because they have to have access to those dumpsters. So what you would end up putting there if you were going to screen it is some sort of a gate. And in our experience, gates on trash dumpsters just get destroyed. They look pretty bad.
And Mr. Stevens, I think, as you have this trash enclosure here illustrated, to be able to see it a little bit more specific in that cross section in there, because there may be where it's well below, I'm not sure if there's a consistent height all the way through the rear of this retaining wall, or that it varies, that at one point it may be 6 feet, but at another point it could be 0 feet. And that provides some, I think it would address some of the concerns both on the commission end and maybe from the adjacent property owners, to see that deviation of what that specifically is. The information's there again, but it's being specific to certain parts or questions that are part of going through as we review the structure.
Yeah, we can provide additional sections through there.
Another, just throwing out in there, not here to design in any way, opportunity if there is concerns on the commission side, when a non-detached single-family property abuts another non-detached single-family property like the Jiffy Lube to the south here, there is what we call a zero lot line. And there may be opportunities pending on that space, either to provide some additional parallel parking, or if a couple of feet could be picked up, some perpendicular parking, if that helps address some of the commission concerns. I don't think you can do it on the north, especially with the grades and all that, but there may be opportunity here to kind of widen that up, but it's kind of at an extreme end of the development too. So.
Well, that's one area that had come to my mind earlier when people were talking about parking. That is an opportunity. We can have additional parking in there. Quite frankly, we didn't show that because we have so much guest parking on this site that I was just surprised that people would really want more additional parking. We're providing twice the number of parking spaces as what is required by code.
Well, I think I think you understand, hopefully you understand where we're coming from and our concerns by it. And maybe they're warranted and maybe they aren't. But I do think at times, there'll be a few times, it will be a problem. But if there was at least some sort of shared comment, that might resolve some of the concerns or issues. So Anybody else have any questions for Tyler? Doug, did you have somebody else that you wanted to bring on?
Only on the as needed basis. I don't think that there's any engineering drainage questions. That would be Ryan, and I mean I'm thinking that Tyler did an excellent presentation, unless you all feel there's any missing links.
Chairman?
The only question, go ahead, Carlos.
One inquiry that I know it was discussed a little bit at the last work session, but the questions come up again. I think I've heard it from commission members and also from some inquiries regarding the development, is to kind of talk about the construction phasing. And again, I do recognize that you did reference it at the last meeting, but if you can kind of get into a little bit of detail of how you see the development phasing taking place.
Okay, Tyler, you want to take that one, or you want me to?
It doesn't matter. I think that what we've discussed in terms of phasing of construction is that all the infrastructure for the site would be done at one time. So we can put in all of the basic storm detention, underground sewers, utilities, all of that with the roads, the curbs, the sidewalks. It's all built together. And then the initial foundation plots for each of the buildings. So the site will be developed as one piece, but then the buildings themselves built up will happen one at a time as they're sold. I'm not exactly sure which end. I think we talked about starting on the south end closest to Olive, but it depends on, I think people coming in early and buying units might want to be more on the north based on initial reaction, but that doesn't matter. It's just as they're sold out building by building, they would be built in those pairs marching down through the site.
But like I said last month, whatever, the financing is set up to take one 5-unit building to completion with no pre-sales needed. And then the momentum will go from there based on sales. Tyler, why don't you talk about the most northern building and how that a little bit differentiates from the rest due to the grades?
Sure. The 7 buildings are pretty much the same, with the exception of the northern building facing that road, because that building, instead of facing a courtyard, faces the road on the north. And so it has a little bit different entrances. There are units that have the ability to enter off of that road on a little courtyard into it. So it gives a little bit of variety going into there.
And those are going to, because of the grades, those are a walkout type unit, or at least large windows in the basement, right?
They have that ability, yes.
Yeah, and through my marketing of talking with all of the abundance of phone calls that I've been getting, I would just speculate that we most likely would be starting on the north side.
Doug, do you have an elevation view of that north side?
Tyler, do you have one?
No, we do not. Yeah. Right now, we just have the elevations that are the standard going down through.
That would be neat to see if you
Yeah,
could
we'll
provide
have that for the next presentation for sure. It's pretty darn cool.
that. Okay.
Again, Chairman, I can inquire. So the underground utility work would be installed, which would include like a lot of the drain lane and plumbing that would be coming upward. Do you intend then to do the 7 foundations? So
Yes.
There would be 7 foundations that would be in place. And then what do you do? Is it then that they're open to open up to the air once completed, or?
Well, the foundations are, because we're trying to balance the site, the foundations, all 7 will be in the beginning. So we're still tweaking that grade on the north, so that we'll have that able to be presented specifically on the next meeting.
then what would you see as an ideal timeframe both for construction and starting on that last one? You know, the inquiries that I got is like, well, how long is that going to take in that process? You know, you would have your ideal thing where the economy is great and people are buying to, I'm sure you have, you know, as long as it doesn't take any longer than this, it's your backup plan.
I'm not understanding your question.
What do you anticipate? Go ahead, Chairman.
If we have unbuilt foundations sitting for a long period of time, what's the potential for those to be sitting there, unbuilt? And what's the potential concerns if they're, potentially filling up with water or, things like that?
Well, I mean, no lender is going to loan me the money to build 35 units at the same time. I lived through 08, 09, and I call those the ambient years. So I'm too old to take those risks now. But I would just say, based on the volume of calls that I'm getting, and we definitely hit a sweet spot for the price points here. And I would kind of challenge anybody to squawk about pricing, layout, and also the features that Douglas Properties is known to offer. So these are going to stand out when we have a few displays done. It's going to be special.
Doug, what will you do, with those unbuilt foundations? I mean, as far as, if water filling them up, or would there be drains in them to make sure that you don't fill those up? And would there be kind of some sort of, protection around those?
For sure. I think that we'll be fencing the entire site. So I know that's not a requirement, but we're going to do that anyway. But we're going to put a construction fence around the entire site. And then I would imagine that once those foundations are in, we'll also have some sump pumps in that are plugged into the temporary power, like we do now on regular housing. I mean, we have houses right now that there's not even concrete on the basement floor, and we have pumps. So we can control that.
Any other specific questions? And
So can I ask a question, Chairman?
yeah, go ahead, Tim.
So Doug, is that correct that I'm thinking that you're gonna have construction fence around all those foundations until everything's completed?
Of course. Yeah, we're gonna have the fence. If one or two buildings are done and sold out, we're gonna be moving that fence to only enclose the construction area, of course, if that's what you're.
And what kind of fence is that? Is that gonna be the orange construction fence?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna do a chain link. I don't know if it'll be as extravagant as what Greg Yowitz is doing, but the national rent-a-fence type deal with that you see, like that we do that in U City. But it'll be I think it's a 5-foot high chain link fence all tethered together.
Correct. And I would suggest that we use the screening that's in it too as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chairman, also, I have one of Doug's team members with their hands up. I'm not sure Mr. Holmes had a comment.
Yeah, Carlos, this is Ryan Holmes from Bowles. I apologize, I'm not set up with a camera here, but I'd like to comment real quick, just a follow up to the drainage question regarding the basements. As we noted, the intent is to install the stormwater and sewers with the initial site construction. And the way that these rear entry garages are set, there's no pit, there's no below grade foundation. So the garages are sloped to drain out to the storm sewers that will be in place. So as far as, filling up with water and things like that, it's going to be set up to drain with the ultimate stormwater sewers in place.
Is it only garage on that basement floor, or is there some portion that's also finished down there? I can't remember.
Tyler can comment, but I believe
So
there's
there's some optional finish down in that lower level, about another 300 or 400 square feet.
Okay, but that's the part that could easily be addressed with the sump pump.
Correct.
Okay. And then the underground detention systems, it looks like you're gonna have one on the north and one on the south. Did I see that correct?
Yes, that is correct. There's a natural, Carlos mentioned it earlier, there's a natural high kind of towards the middle of the site, north to south. So following MSD standards, and we're not going to break the watersheds and take it each way. And the way this site lays out with grades, it's not really even possible. So it is split up between the northern half and the southern half to their own separate underground detention structures. Yes.
Good. Thank you. I see, Jody, you had a question?
Yeah, would the sidewalk still be available on Dealman during construction? Because we've had all kinds of issues with sidewalks during construction lately, it seems like.
Yeah, the fencing would be well inside the sidewalk. It will not impede upon sidewalk traffic.
Thank you.
Doug, what other new things do you plan on bringing for the next meeting, just so we can know what to expect?
Well, I think Tyler would be better suited for that answer.
Yeah, I'm trying to we're trying to make a list of the things that you're requesting. Certainly what I've heard tonight is additional sections in the back and additional information around the trash area. With regard to parking, if we can find additional parking spaces on the site to stack even more cars. Those are things, and then the elevation of the north building. I believe those are the main items that I heard. So I'm missing one.
Did you also include the couple cross sections between these buildings and the neighborhood to the west?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about with regard to this.
Good. Just wanted to make sure we're being clear. And then Carlos, you also wanted to see what the height of the retaining wall, how that varied along the west alleyway.
And I think those will get illustrated in those cross sections. You know, like those cross sections can do a couple of things. One is illustrate what happens within that setback and that height, and then also what happens to the line of sight of the adjacent property owners and such.
Good. Okay, anything else that anybody else would request? Seeing none. Okay, Carlos, I think, do we have any public comments?
Okay. Yeah, hold on. Let me get this situated here. So we did receive some comments from the adjacent property owners. I want to kind of go over, and those were paper copies were provided to you, and they're in a PDF. And I know the developer was going to reach out to one of the trustee representatives, and I'm not sure if these the same comments were relayed or not. And I haven't personally forwarded a copy of what I received from the subdivision. So I'd like to kind of go over, highlight what they've had in there in an effort to give them ample time to address the commission on the broader expanse of what their concerns are, and then to allow an opportunity for some questions and answers with the commission, if that's okay, Chairman.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So you have a copy in which they've identified 5 primary concerns in there, and each of those concerns have components to them that address them in a broader aspect. And one is, of course, the buffer, and there's been discussions regarding that buffer in there. And in there, they are asking for the same things that the commission is inquiring about the distances, the easements, the heights, the design, openings and voids, and again, seeking for the commission to look at that in the site plan review process as a means to ensure that their properties are protected from any adverse impacts from the development. And also, of course, the location of the trash receptacles and that roadway, and not only just the design and placement of those, but the noises that are generated from those things. The other thing is regarding the density on there, and I'll let them address that a little bit more, because while it is referring density as 2 units, but it's also noting that each of these units have multiple vehicles, and then those vehicles add on to 2 within the internal roadway system, and then just the activity and noises that would be generated by that. You know, if that buffer is adequate to try to mitigate or mediate that, and then exterior illumination, not just from the vehicles themselves, but from the houses and any exterior poles that they have. They've inquired about the construction. Well, and I apologize. Here, I thought I was sharing, as I was talking, sharing my screen, and I'm going to go back to that. Okay, you should have a copy of that. I'm just going to quickly note the 5 primary concerns: the buffer, the density, the construction timeframe, the height, terrain, and survey, and then the notices of the proposed development through the city's process and procedures for notification. Regarding the buffer, a lot of the same comments that the commission had in the discussions that were within the report. The density, again, not just the units, but also those units create vehicle demands and how those are mitigated, and then the lighting and noise that would be generated from those. Going back now, they also inquired about the construction timeframe in there, how the buildings constructions would be phased, the length of time, the placement and expectations of the buffers and the screen walls being in place, and hours of construction. Then about the height, terrain, and survey, you know, the slopes from north to south, you know, the number of stories and what is visible from the western end. Is it 2 stories? Is it 3 stories? And then regarding the accurate determination and placement of where those properties are. And finally, the notification process of the city, and I'll take responsibility on that end. You know, by code, the city is required to provide notice to property owners within 185 feet prior to a public hearing. Our policy, since I've been here, is when we receive an application, we send out notices to properties within 300 feet. And in many cases, we'll make a determination that if it's a cul-de-sac or a tightly knit community, we'll just send it to everyone that's in there. We did send out notices between the Christmas holiday and the January holiday, but apparently a lot of them were not received. In there, we did prepare the notices. We do keep a list of the addresses that were issued, but you know, we can't verify, you know, that you know, why they were not received. You know, at that point, once we deliver them, they're out of our realm of influence. But one thing I do know, and we'll note to the commission, is that we keep good lines of communication with our residents. And I was fortunate to know one of the residents on Indian Trails through my years of working here, and we had a good rapport. And unfortunately, he did take the burden on, but he did provide notices and informed the property owners well in advance to be able to be here in the January, the earlier January meeting, and of course today's meeting. So we apologize that those postcards had not been received. We know we did send those in there, and you know, we are working hard to improve our notification process, and that's not the responsibility of the developer. That's our responsibility, and we apologize for any inconvenience. But I am glad, and I do appreciate you know, the residents that got the word out. And we also know from the Castlegate perspective that those residents, again, having these lines of communications, that they were aware of this development coming in before the holidays too. So Chairman, if you don't mind, I do have 3 representatives, I believe, from the subdivision that would like to address the commission. If there are any specific questions regarding to the 5 items that are listed here, I'd be glad to answer. And if not, give an opportunity for the representatives to kind of address the commission.
Very good. Yeah, I'm fine.
Bear with me 1 second.
No worries.
All right. So Mr. Ziegel, I'm going to promote you first as a panelist. Mr. Ziegel has been my primary contact since the last meeting in January. And then Mr. Ziegel, I know Mr. Kalina is on, and I'm not sure who else would be here as part of your association.
Thanks very much, Carlos, and good evening, everyone. Thanks for all the great details in the planning from Tyler and Mr. Cohen and the commission. Just for the record, Eric Ziegel, 1144 Indian Trails. I am the co-trustee of our subdivision with my neighbor, Mohammed Islam, but he is not able to attend today. I don't think he's on, but he might be. I can't see who all are in attendance. Really, everything has been addressed. I don't want to go over the other key components as Carlos, you summarized, the buffer height, density. Were all addressed. 2 follow-up questions quickly, though, we're on the, this might be for Mr. Cohen and Tyler, the exterior lighting for the property. I haven't seen that being addressed as all in terms of the lighting. And then from the elevation design with that 3 to 4 foot wall, and then the buffer zone with the planting and the evergreens. If I look at the design correctly, as residents of the townhouses come in and out with the 70+ cars at night or during the day, how would is measured with the headlights kind of extend over that? It's a little unclear of when they come in from the east to the west, how that part would look. It looked, just to clarify, if you would please, on that height of the exterior, well, the exterior lighting, and then how you would think that the lighting from cars could impact into our backyards.
Certainly. First off, with regard to the lighting of the development, we don't have a lighting plan that we've submitted at this point. But this is just a reminder that what we're building is all residential. There's no commercial aspect to this. So we're not talking about a big commercial lit parking lot. The lighting that we will provide will be very standard residential, low neighborhood lighting, because the people in this development wouldn't want bright lights shining in their windows, just like you wouldn't in yours. With regards to the car, that's one of the reasons why we have incorporated this landscape wall in the back, not only to handle the grade changes. The neighborhood sits a little bit higher than this development. It kind of falls as it goes towards Dealman. And so all of that's good, puts the neighborhood houses up higher. And then we incorporated that wall on purpose so that the cars would sit down below it. A wall that's between 3 and 4 feet high is going to hide all the headlights of any car coming in there, hide really visually the car itself, other than the top of it sticking above it. And then when you incorporate the landscaping beyond that, which sits up on top of the wall at a higher elevation, the cars really will appear to be down in a lower area.
Okay, and then thank you. And then the construction time frame. I know Doug, you have mentioned that you will build in all at one time with at least the foundations. But if you could please, just when you're, as best case scenario as was outlined, 1 to 2 years, 2.5. It's good to hear that you have got a great response, but it would just be good to know, like, what's the extent, what would you think would be, I know we don't have a crystal ball, but just the best, kind of that scenario of we're going to be all tidied up by 2023 at the end of that full year. If you have occupancy in the fall of this year or summer of 2023.
If everything goes accordingly and I start when I'm hoping to start, then I'm telling potential buyers the first occupancy would be summer of 23.
For one building, right? And then,
That's
okay,
all depending on sales. I mean, if
right, yeah.
35, if one person bought 35 units, they would be already
Well,
in
sure.
late summer of 23.
Okay, so this type of a project, though, in your anticipations that you've done similar ones in Kirkwood, I'm not sure of the size. Was it an equal size in terms of the price point and the size? How long was it from start to finish?
I wasn't the developer. Tyler was the architect for another
Okay,
developer.
right.
So, I mean, I think all I could tell you is what I tell my investors. And we built a pro forma based on about a 2.5 year end of the pack up and leave.
From 2023, when they're starting construction? No, from the summer of 2022, the summer you would start construction.
Correct.
Right.
So as soon as we start digging and placing infrastructure, if I'm right with a crystal ball of the current market conditions, as long as there's not a war, I think that again, what I put together on a pro forma with a team of investors was about a 2.5 year scenario.
Okay, that narrows it down. Thank you. Again, I know that the other concerns for the February 3rd meeting will be addressed, and I want to thank everyone for touching on those. So I'll leave the rest of the time to my other neighbor, Alan Kalina, if he has others comments or if there's questions for me.
Does any commission members have any questions for Eric? Seeing none, I appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.
Welcome, thank you.
Carlos, if we can bring on another neighbor.
Mr. Kalina, you should be set up as a panelist.
Unmute and start video.
There you go.
You got
sir.
me?
Yes, sir.
Sorry about that. How are you all doing?
Good.
I've got a spectrum
Alan,
of
Alan,
yes.
if you don't mind.
Alan Kalina, 1120 Indian Trails Drive. Sorry, I forgot.
No worries.
It's been a while. Thank you all. I appreciate your good work and your looking out for we Olivet residents. A couple of points of various things that were touched on or things that were just said today. I'm assuming everyone has access to the full document that Eric put together, so you can go through that on your own time and look at a broader spectrum of our specific concerns. One of the biggest concerns, the west wall barrier, as it were, to me now is still very vague as to what's going to happen back there. 10-foot landscaping buffers, 6-foot screen wall. The question is what easements are in play, both on the back side of our properties and then on the east side of our properties, on the west side of your properties. There are obviously power lines and phone lines that go between the properties we're discussing here. So there needs to be access for there have been trees that have come down over a period of years. We've lost power. There's been work. My family's lived and owned this house since the middle of 1961. So over a period of time, I've kind of witnessed everything known to mankind around this part of our world. So I would like some more very specific clarity on exactly what we're going to be seeing when we look out our patio door exactly what's going to be on our east side and the west side of this development. I seem to be hearing somewhat shifting signals, and I also thought it was interesting that with all the detail that exists for this project that has been available to us online, that fairly uniquely, if not completely uniquely, the wall on the back was kind of brushed off as somebody else is going to deal with that. And so it hasn't apparently front-loaded been much of a priority. Obviously, from our standpoint, it is very much a priority. So will be eager to hear more details regarding what's going to separate this development and our lives. Another thing similarly that concerns me in particular is the wraparound road. And I guess the question is, technically speaking, Tyler, Doug, what are you calling that loop? What are you calling your street that you're building behind your property and behind ours?
Do you mean a name for the street?
Yeah, I mean, just I don't speak construction speak. What do you?
Oh, well, it's really an access drive.
Access drive, okay. If you run the numbers here realistically, and I'm not understanding how there's twice as much parking here as there should be or needs to be. That again, I'm not in the construction business, but
Alan,
if there's just two cars.
I'm going to have to ask you to try to wrap it up because you've exceeded the 3 minutes, but I'll give you some more leniency.
Okay, I'll just go really quick.
To finish this up.
The bottom line is there's going to be, if you figure out that there's could be as many as 140 cars associated with your development, and those cars are going to be coming and going, there's going to be garbage trucks, there's going to be delivery trucks, there's going to be mail vehicles. We are literally going to have the equivalent of hundreds of vehicles driving behind our property every single day. Assuming that various residents are coming and going every given day, multiple times like we all do, there will literally be hundreds of people driving in our backyards. So that's a concern of mine. There was a mention of a per acre scenario and how this build is really not that dense compared to some other things, including our street. I'm afraid that the apartments at the top of the street obviously skew the density of our street, because the vast majority of our street are single occupant, single family homes.
Alan, I'm going to have to ask you to kind of wrap it up if you don't mind.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, we're well beyond the 3 minutes, and I apologize, but there's going to be other public comments.
Okay. Then the last comment that I'll make is seems to be a conflict when the developer is discussing or writing about these properties. They're variously 2 stories or 3 stories. It's obvious that the basements / garages are not all 100% below grade. Your own information, one of your people today specifically said, called them 3 stories. Some of your paperwork refers to them as 3 stories. So I just think that to act like they're 2 stories when they're obviously 3 stories, I'm not understanding. So I'll let it go at that for whatever any of that's worth. If anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to address them.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Alan?
I'd like to clarify just a couple things that he said. First off, starting with the notion that the retaining wall is been vague. There's a note on the civil plan that says a retaining wall by others, and maybe that's the note he read.
Yes.
That's a common note, that it means that the civil engineer is not designing the retaining wall because it's not in their realm to design those walls. He doesn't mean that it's being built by somebody else. He means that he's not designing that as part of the civil package. It's
fabulous. Thanks for the clarity.
So all those details will be there. With regard to the 2 and 3 stories, I want to say very clearly, this is a 2-story building as defined by the building code, as defined by the zoning code. A 2-story building with a walkout basement is still a 2-story building. Much like a 2-story house that has a walkout basement on the back is not considered a 3-story house. The lower level is entirely below grade, even though the garage door does open on it. Those are just by definition of building codes.
Okay, and I'm sorry, because it looked to me like your plan, first of all, on your plans, and I can't speak to specifically where right now, it does in fact say that it's 3-story. And I can't help but feel that unless the foundation is completely subterranean, which seemingly none of it is, then I don't know how that doesn't qualify as 3rd floor. It sounds like it's a building code, a language I don't speak.
Well, we'll get better clarity. I'm
Thank
sure,
you. I
with some of the
appreciate that.
elevations. So, all right, good. Carlos, is there any other questions or comments for for Alan?
Two things. Mr. Holmes has his hand up, and I didn't know if Ryan, if you had a question or just hadn't brought it down for the first time.
I think that was there before.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Ryan.
I'm sorry, Carlos. Yeah, I think Tyler answered what I was going to regarding the note on the retaining wall. So
all right. If there's anybody else in the audience that would like to speak regarding this development, if you can show your hand. Again, that's located on the lower part of the Zoom screen, right in the middle. You should have a little hand icon. Just click that and I'll transfer you over. I do see several people. I do recognize a majority of them, but there are a couple that I'm not sure if you are on specific for this development or not. That being said, Chairman, if I could just have a couple of seconds before.
No, that'd be no problem.
And Chairman, there appears to be none at this time.
Okay, good. Well, thanks everybody for all their efforts and discussions and on this and your time. I appreciate it.
We'll continue, Chairman, if you don't mind, we'll continue the discussion on this agenda item. Our next scheduled meeting is Thursday, February 3rd. The commission meets on the 1st and 3rd Thursdays of each month. The meetings are at 7:00 p.m. It's always hard to tell the agenda, but we all, what to expect from the agenda, but we always post that agenda the Friday prior to the scheduled meeting. So you have the weekend to try to coordinate and see what items are on there. As soon as new information is received, like these plans that we received today, I'll post them up in the website so they're available for the public for view in there. And then both Mr. Kalina and Mr. Ziegel have my contact information if there's any questions. I did note that to Mr. Cohen, I'll forward a copy of the letter we received today, unless one had already been distributed to him. Just let me know. And again, we anticipate that there will be continued discussion on this item Thursday, February 3rd. And
Do we know yet if that is committed to Zoom or potentially in person?
the way the things are going, I would assume that they're probably going to be on Zoom. Yeah. And again, that's not just make sure to ensure your safety and your development team safety, but our residents, but also our staff in there and the volunteers on these commissions. So.
Okay.
Right, Chairman.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
Chairman, if I can just have a second to do some rearranging here.
Good.
All right, I think we have everybody rearranged, Chairman, and I'm going to go back to sharing the screen and continue down the agenda.
Okay, we're on item B, which is 1004 and 1014 Dolores Avenue preliminary subdivision plot, 3-lot residential subdivision. Petition types is a preliminary subdivision plat for a 3-lot single-family residential subdivision. Petitioner is Jeffrey Schindler with Schindler Homes, property owner Schindler Homes. Carlos?
Chairman, we discussed this a little bit at our last work session, and also there's been some work in terms of text scenarios that this development would benefit from, and that was one of the issues. Back in April, so this is the spring of 2021, the property owner at 1004 Dolores, which is right at the terminus of Dolores Avenue, which is right off of Olive Boulevard. They sold this house along with the neighboring property here that they own to the north to Mr. Schindler, who was looking at redeveloping the parcels. Some of the history on this, that this subdivision consisted of 50-foot wide lots. So all the properties north, including this property with the creek, are 50-foot wide. Somewhere in the 60s, 3 of these lots were combined for the construction of this home and pool. This property was left as is, even though they were under the same ownership. So in reality, you know, there were legally 3 individual lots, 50 feet in width at one time, and they were combined. Mr. Schindler's intention was to raise the property and revert back to the 3 original lots. But there was a caveat that we kind of discussed in there, that, you know, the code sections had been changed, and the city would not allow, under the code, the city doesn't allow any new lots to be created that are 60 feet or that are less than 60 feet in width. So the scenario of reverting back to the original 50-foot lots was not in play. Working with Mr. Schindler, we looked at what other scenarios were available here, and ultimately he came in to propose a 3-lot subdivision through a combination of the 2 properties that he had purchased that look similar to what you see here. We met with staff, the public works director, the fire marshal, and chief, to kind of talk about Dolores Avenue, which is an older street, and also a street called Tess that is perpendicular to Dolores Avenue that really is a driveway, and to look at, you know, whether, you know, there would be sufficient right-of-way road improvements in that area to address if he pursued trying to subdivide the property. The other issue that we knew we would have to address is that there is a identified creek that runs diagonally on the northern end of the property, and according to our stream and buffer ordinance, that creek is protected, even though that creek is no longer natural. It has been artificially modified and consists of a gabion wall system, and in certain places then gets channelized and then gets piped underneath Price Road. That chapter 425, or excuse me, that buffer regulations would require at a minimum a 25-foot undisturbed natural vegetative buffer to protect the stream banks, an additional 25-foot setback to mediate the stormwater impurities going into the stream itself. As the commission is aware, back in December and in January, the commission approved a text amendment that allows a waiver to the stream buffer protection if the stream banks have been artificially modified in there. And what that does is provide an opportunity to reduce, you know, the 225, which total 50 feet in setbacks, and reduce that to 20 feet, and provides an opportunity to create 3 individual lots that are 60 feet in width, and that would qualify for what we call variation in lot standard. In the SR district, if you are in a neighborhood where the lots are less than the required minimums, there is a process to determine a calculation and to come up to an average lot area, lot width, lot depth. And if you equal or exceed those, you can create lots of that size, so long as the width is no less than 60 feet. So Mr. Schindler did put together a design scenario here that would work, subject to the text amendment and a waiver being granted to the buffer setback, or to the buffer, the stream buffer, not the setback. He would provide the setback in there. But one of the things, you know, working with Mr. Schindler, was that we would create the situation here where we would have this land that is part of this development, but is in the other side of the creek. And, it would be poor planning practice to kind of neglect that and to just assume that they're going to run the lawnmower through the street and go to the other side of the creek and maintain this property, and that we wouldn't hear from the adjacent neighbor, about property maintenance, or that they assume that they own that. And we've had stories similar to that in other places. In addition to that, this neighbor here at 1016 owns a piece of property on the other side of the creek right there, a little triangular piece. And again, I'm assuming somehow they get to the other side of the creek and maintain the property without there being any, disputes about access and such. So, working with Mr. Schindler, he engaged with the property owner here. If he could make the 3 lots work, that he would work or try to address these issues here. And lo and behold, it seems like they are able to do so. Mr. Schindler would obtain redivide the old 4 lots and create these 3 lots here that would meet the code minimums through the variation process, which has to be authorized by the commission in there, and then be able to swap properties with the adjacent neighbor to the north and really clean this up on our behalf in there. And we do appreciate that. The caveats in doing so is that, a lot of the times, while we do have, owner occupied property, many times they got mortgages out, and all of a sudden you're dealing with other entities in order to make this type of transaction work. Thanks to Mr. Schindler's persistence, they did. And we think that, again, that the original 3-lot subdivision can become a 4-lot subdivision, providing an opportunity for this neighboring property to really do what would be a boundary adjustment and take over the triangular piece that's adjacent to their property, and that there would be an exchange at this back end for this property here. So long-winded, that being said, I mean, we've been working behind the scenes to try to see how we could make this work best. There were originally 4 properties that were, along the creek south. Those no longer can be done because of the code, codes change over time. But they have come up with a scenario where they could do so through the variation process, which that is what we're asking the commission to consent. Then that would authorize the petitioner at our next meeting to submit the preliminary subdivision plat, which is going to look somewhat like this. You'll get all the contour lines and data that we've already assessed and look at, but include this northern property here because that's the only way we can make that exchange. At the same time, they'll submit a final subdivision plat that will have all the legal requirements that would be submitted. And of course, we would be seeking the commission to provide the waiver to the stream bank buffer, given that this stream bank now is a Gabion wall. It's no longer a natural stream bank. They would provide the 25-foot setback, and they would work with the city to make sure that it's vegetated well enough to filter out impurities going into that stream bank. There are no immediate inlets that are on the properties themselves that we need to be worried about. There are public inlets, of course, on the street. This is a public street that are in the city's right of way, and of course maintained by MSD. So at that point, we're here tonight just in an effort to get a motion from the commission to act through the site plan review to authorize what we call the variation in lot standard, and to provide the waiver to the stream bank to allow the opportunity for the preliminary plat to be submitted at our next meeting. Be glad to answer any specific questions. Sorry, it was kind of long-winded, but I did want to stress that there was a lot of behind the scenes work to try to make this not just about the property that he owns, but trying to resolve some bigger issues for the long term. So.
It looks like it kind of met the goals, to get everything done, and that's
absolutely
that's great. That's great. Anybody have any specific questions for Carlos on this? Carlos, do we have any public comments related to this?
Yes, I do have I'm going to promote Mr. Schindler to the panelists, see if he's got any comments.
Good,
And
good.
there, Mr. Schindler, I also have Mr. Tipton, who is part of his team. If you want me to transfer him over, just let me know. Jeff, you should be all set.
All right, let's see here.
There
You
you
got
go.
me? Can you hear
Yes,
me?
sir.
All right, well, first of all, thank you, Carlos. You've been great to work with, and I'm glad it's kind of coming together. Jeff Schindler with Schindler Homes, and thank you, commissioners, for your time this evening. I know it's late. Quite honestly, Carlos, I think summed it up great. We have been working diligently behind the scenes to come up with something that we think works real well, and working with the neighbors have been great. And honestly, I'm here for any questions you guys might have, but I don't want to, reiterate what Carlos has already gone through. So
Appreciate it, sir. Anybody have any questions or comments for Mr. Schindler? Seeing none, so thank you very much. Appreciate all your diligence in getting it done. Carlos, do we have any other public comments related to this?
If there's anybody else that would like to speak regarding this petition, I do have two other attendees. I'm thinking they're just here to hear the meeting, but raise your hand, Mr. Cohen, Mr. Koenig, if there's any comments. At this point, Chairman, I don't see any.
Okay, seeing none, seeing no further discussion, do I hear a motion?
Chairman,
Go ahead, Carol.
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve the petition for site plan review, authorizing the variation lot standard under section 400.240 as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated January 20, 2022, subject to staff conditions noted therein, so as to permit a petition for preliminary subdivision plat for a 4-lot subdivision of the property grounds currently addressed as 1004, 1014, and 1016 Dolores Avenue.
Motion's been made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Carol Wagner and seconded by Tim Spiegelglass. Carlos, will you please call the vote?
Mr. Spiegelglass,
Approve.
Mr. Lewis,
Approve.
Mrs. Rich,
Approved.
Mrs. Wagner,
Approved.
Chairman Jorgel,
Approved.
and the motion passes unanimously. So Chairman, anticipate that we'll get the preliminary subdivision plat at our next meeting on February 3rd, along in conjunction with the final plat. And there, by that time, the council should have acted, and I'm assuming that they would motion to approve based on the first reading, the waiver that authorizes removal of the stream buffer as recommended by the commission.
Good, good. All right, that sounds good.
Thank you,
Thank you,
gentlemen.
Mr. Schindler. Appreciate it.
thank you very much, guys. Have a good night.
Bye-bye. Okay, good. Carlos, so we'll move on to discussion items. And I'm gonna say is, since we're already at 9, well after 9, can we move this or, kind of push this to the next meeting?
Yes, absolutely. And it's just, if I could just get one quick minute, it's about short-term rentals. It was something we brought to the commission's attention last summer. Commission said we really should get some kind of input or guidance from the council. It has been discussed with the council, and we'll start our discussions from the commission level at our upcoming meetings. Right now, in terms of priorities, it's in there, but it's not at the extreme end that it's something the council wants right away.
Good,
That's
good.
all I have, Chairman. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on to other business, meeting minutes, and
Meeting
I
minutes?
don't see any. So we'll move on to reports.
Regarding reports, I believe we may have 2 new single-family homes scheduled for our next meeting, one in the Oak Estates subdivision And I'm not sure if there was another one that came in regarding our meeting schedule. Of course, that would be on the 3rd and then the 20th. I think Miss Doty had put together a meeting schedule we'll pass out to you regarding council and our meetings as they are set out for the rest of the year. To the best of my knowledge, we'll probably continue Zoom on February 3rd. The council will determine when we would be going back to some public meetings or some limited public meetings. But at this point, I think at least in preparations that February 3rd will probably be online. Development activity still going pretty well. In there, if there's any questions or inquiries, please feel free to email me, call me, or so. We are trying to get the sidewalk issues all resolved. Birdie Lane hopefully should be wrapped up. We had some issues with Spire, which is on the south side of Old Bonham, of the public utilities, to getting that completed. There should be doing flat work at the Firestone facility to help open up that Dealman area, and also along Olive Boulevard. Demolition should start real soon at Irvington and Ryan in there, where they're just waiting again for public utilities to kind of get that wrapped up. A lot of activity work going on at the community center as the footings are getting ready to go in place. It's pretty exciting. And at that point, I think that's all, unless there's any specific questions.
Anybody have any questions for Carlos? Seeing none, I think we'll move on to Missy.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Mr. Trejo indicated, we will be having 2 public hearings on our agenda for the city council meeting on the 26th, I think, or maybe the 25th. And that will include the topic that you all were dealing with tonight, that we're going to deal with the second reading on the waiver. And we are also continuing our discussion with regards to the vaccination policy that the city wants to implement. And I do believe, as Mr. Trejo said, that we'll probably still continue Zoom, probably to at least the middle to the end of February. We're all kind of watching, the curve and what has kind of happened around us, and watching our numbers. So we do want everybody to be safe. So do anticipate, at least for, I'm going to say, the middle of February, and it really is going to be the city manager's call in conversation, but she really runs the city and is the one that needs to make sure that protocol for everyone's safety is necessary. I really appreciate everything you've done. Again, 2 public hearings that we'll have in our council meeting, and the vaccination conversation. I don't know what could be at this point in time, because the mayor and the pro tem do provide meetings to set the agenda. Yesterday, there was the coffee with the mayor, and it was his guest was the esteemed Bruce McGregor and Joelle Aguirre from our Republic Services, talking about recycling. Some really good conversation. It was a good meeting. We are in the middle of looking at our new trash contract. Our contract is up, and our budget starts July 1st. So we're in the middle of those contract negotiations with the trash company. And I can just say that, if you're a senior, and there's the potential for a good break if you're a senior with your trash company. And when we sign up, and yes, I will do this time, I meet that definition now. I learned that, when I sign up as a senior for the trash service and get that discount, the city gets it too. I didn't know that. So I'm putting that out there, so that's all the good stuff that I can really think of at this point in time. If I haven't, I want to wish everybody a happy, healthy, safe New Year, and nothing more really to report other than my appreciation of y'all and what you're doing. And it's going to be exciting again. I do have a question for you, Carlos. Got the message that the underwire electrical wirings are going for Mr. Yowitz's project down there by 170. You know, how are they doing with that? Will they really get that done by tomorrow? Because they are working at nighttime right now, doing that activity.
Most of the night work was completed, and it looks like just the final connections are necessary, but I'm not specific to that. Ameren is being one of the primary public utilities, is kind of its own entity, and we have limited, jurisdiction on that because it's a public service commission that oversees them. But I believe the night work is complete.
Okay.
If anybody got to see it last night, it wasn't as bright as the U City Fields a couple of months ago, but
Yeah.
It was
Those are
bright
pretty
when I came
blinding.
home last night, but
Uh-huh.
there was nothing there this evening when I came home. It was all
Okay.
locked up.
So see, we do quick work in our community. We don't have to make people suffer for 45 days of 24 hours a day, on the
And we
other
didn't
side
lose
of the
power.
viaduct.
The,
Huh?
the, one-
Yeah.
No
the
power
one thing,
loss.
the one thing I'll note regarding Olive Crossing, that was one of the important milestones that was necessary or required under the developers agreement, and that has been met and on schedule. And there's again, it seems like it's been taking forever, but that utility work was one of the big obstacles for getting this site redeveloped. This was probably one of the biggest ones. Outside of MSD was the electrical lines. They ran diagonally right through the property in there. So it's a major improvement.
So we're
Very
on the
good.
downhill drag. So appreciate it. And if you want to just give, everybody, Plant Haven seems to be going up pretty quick. Carlos, if there's anything to share with that, and then I will just get out of the way and let us adjourn.
Good, good.
And I like
Carlos?
that. Good. Anything on Plant Haven?
No, nothing that I'm aware of. I know that he's still looking at outreach on that. He was waiting for the building to further develop. It looks really sharp in there, especially with the windows now going in. And he's being very particular with what he's looking for. So
Okay.
that's good for us.
All right. So that's the news and the latest and the greatest. Everybody, thank you very much. Carlos, go ahead and take it back.
Actually, Dawn, do you have any comments?
I do not at this time.
Good, good. Anybody else in the committee or the commission have any comments they want to make? That being said, we'll adjourn at 9:43. So appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Have a great night, everybody.
Good night.
Recording.